So it's called Raptor, and it's green, and it even has a roar, but it's not themed to a dinosaur. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm gonna rank every coaster and give them my review. Every drop and every hill, every launch and every loop. Rate it 1 to 10 and then we'll do it all again. Gonna rank and review every coaster. Oh, where's my water? Here's my water. What's going on, everybody? My name is Mario. This is a channel all about amusement park type stuff, but mostly coasters. And today, in my never-ending journey to rank and review every single coaster I have ever been on, that sounded so weird. We're going to be talking about Raptor at Cedar Point. And real quick, I just wanted to say thank you to anyone that is subscribed. You guys are awesome. And to anybody that's not subscribed, you better subscribe, or else Cedar Point is going to fall into Lake Erie. And we don't want that to happen. But without any further ado, let's review. So we'll start off by going over some of the stats for this coaster. Raptor has a maximum height of 137 feet, a top speed of 57 miles per hour, a total of 6 inversions, a track length of 3,790 feet, a ride duration of 1 minute and 3 seconds from the end of the lift till the final brake run, and 1 confusing name. And those stats are pretty standard for a B&M looper. Now to start us off with the ride experience, let's talk about some of the off-ride aspects of this coaster. First of all, Raptor is located in the front of the park at Cedar Point, which is probably my least favorite part of that park. It's just generic buildings, no shade. There's nothing particularly endearing about this area. The coaster is located right next to the midway and even goes over parts of it. And this coaster used to have an iconic and, in my opinion, obnoxiously loud roar. It's been dialed down in previous years, but I know some people miss it. I don't know why you want your ears to bleed, but hey, to each their own, I suppose. Now, like just about every other ride at Cedar Point, Raptor doesn't really have any theming, but I do think Raptor has a nice color scheme. It has multiple different colors on the track, which is always fun, but that's about all there is to it aesthetically. As far as the line for this ride goes, it has some of those problems that I was mentioning earlier. It's a very bland, boring, and very hot queue to wait in. Luckily, the queue shouldn't be much of a problem for you as long as you go at the right time of day. Since this is at the front of the park, it does tend to get busy right after opening, but it does die down towards the middle of the day once the crowds have worked their way towards the back of the park. But enough about the off-ride stuff, let's get into the on-ride experience. And straight out of the gate, I'll just let you guys know that I do not think this ride I do not think this ride is as good as most people do. I think it's less forceful than people claim it to be, and I think it has weird pacing. Overall, I think it's just kind of generic and overrated. But I don't think it's a bad ride. And to go into more detail about all that stuff, let's go ahead and check out the layout of this coaster. So to start things off, you turn out of the station, go up a lift hill, and that's where you reach your maximum height of 137 feet, which honestly doesn't feel super tall because you are at Cedar Point. Like, half the rides in the park are taller than this coaster. And also surprisingly, for a park that has some of the best views in the world from its other coasters, lift hills, this one doesn't do anything special. It just looks over the midway, which, as I mentioned earlier, isn't my favorite. But enough about the lift hill. You come out of that lift hill, go into the first drop, and this first drop is relatively unique. Now, unlike most B&M inverts where you have just a turn as the entire drop, this one starts off turning and then finishes straight. So you get some good whippiness. In the back, you even get some weird air time. So overall, I do like this drop. It's definitely not the best drop in the world, but it does stand out as far as inverts go. At the bottom of the drop, you go straight into the first inversion, which is a vertical loop. It's not the most forceful in the world, but it's good. After that vertical loop, you go straight into the ride's second inversion, which is a 0G roll. And I love B&M 0G rolls. They're some of my favorite elements on a roller coaster. They're so whippy, so good. This one is no exception. And the pacing between those first 3 elements is fantastic. But after that 0G roll, you hit like a second of straight track. It's just kind of funky for there to just be straight track before going into the next inversion, which is the Cobra roll. Or 2 inversions, whatever, math, who cares. Now this Cobra roll is also relatively unique, but it is also a little weird when it comes to pacing. The transition from the sort of half loop part into sort of the half corkscrew part, speaking in like roller coaster tycoon terms here, it's super whippy. But it does really slow down. It's like you're going really fast up into it and then slowing down to a crawl. So while the transitions are whippy, it doesn't flow very nicely. After that, you head into an upwards right turn, and then that turns into a leftward turn and helix that goes into the mid-course brake run. And this helix is relatively forceful. Just kidding, I misspoke. I meant to say forceless because it is not forceful. It's the opposite. Which is fine, it's just a transition into the mid-course, but it does kind of just slow down the pacing of the ride since all those first elements were pretty back to back to back. So to just be taking this sort of slow meandering helix into a mid-course brake run, it does sort of slow down the pacing a bit. Coming out of that mid-course brake run, you take a right-hand turn, and then you go into a nice, relatively whippy corkscrew or flat spin. It is a really stretched out corkscrew. Does it feel much different? No, not really. It's pretty whippy, but you know, if you've been on a B&M invert and experienced a corkscrew, it's pretty much the exact same as that. So the ride is starting to pick its pacing back up again, and then you hit some straight track with some mild turning kind of going over the midway. So it's just, again, you got something going, and then you just fizzle out a little bit. You have a very small dip, which doesn't really provide any forces at all, and then you head into the next corkscrew, which is another good element. Coming out of that, you head into what is pretty much the finale of the ride, which is a helix. It's like 540 degrees or something. You head into a pretty hot, toasty helix. Although this isn't really that forceful. I feel like Silver Bullet at Knott's Berry Farm has a much more intense final helix than Raptor does. I don't know, maybe I've gotten really, really slow rides on Raptor, but I've ridden it about 5 or 6 times, different days, different years. It just doesn't do it for me, man. I don't know. After that, you take one more turn, and then you have a terrible transition into the final brake run. But if you're ready for it, you can brace for it, and it won't be that brutal. And yeah, that's it. There's some pretty good elements on this coaster. None of them are anything too special, but they are all good. It's just weird how the ride doesn't really flow in between these elements. So while I appreciate the fact that Raptor has a long ride duration, I don't feel like it's always doing something in that amount of time. But anyways, let's get into a pros and cons list. So the pros, like I was saying, it has good elements. And some of those elements are intense. This ride does have some intensity, so decently intense, kind of. And again, it's a long ride, so yeah, there's that. Cons. The pacing, obviously. It has weird transitions. Those meandery parts of the midway, the straight track into the Cobra roll, and of course that brutal transition into the final brake run. All not the best transitions. But now to rank this thing on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best coaster ever, 1 being the worst coaster ever, and 5 just being middle of the road, I'd go ahead and give this thing a 7 out of 10. I'd pick quite a few coasters over Raptor, but I do still enjoy riding it. And as far as where it lands on the list of all the other coasters I've been on, well, I've been on 215 at the time of making this video, and Raptor sits at 59. That's probably a lot lower than most people would expect, but I also think it's really not that bad. That's still in like the upper quarter-ish of all the coasters I've been on. Maybe? Math. Out of all the coasters that I've ranked so far in this series, that puts it just below Thunder Run, and people are probably going to hate on that, but honestly, just the pacing of Thunder Run makes it feel like you're getting a full experience from start to finish, and Raptor just doesn't match that for me. Although, as you can tell, Raptor is better than SLCs. So hey, it has that going for it. But if I'm being completely honest, SLCs have better pacing. Hate to say it, but they do. They flow perfectly from element to element. They just ouch. But anyways, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you've been on Raptor, what you think of it. Am I right? Am I wrong? Go ahead and subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. Go ahead and share the video if you're feeling extra fancy. And make sure you tune in next time where I'll be talking about... If you guys didn't like my opinion on this one, just wait till next time.